Hello and welcome to The Trade. Before we get into the technicals, a quick look at what traders are watching. And the US trade balance in August rose from $78.2 billion to $59.6 billion, with the Atlanta Fed's GDP prediction model projecting a more than 4% rate of growth in the third quarter. The US October payrolls report will be released along with the November report in mid-December, which will come after the next FOMC decision, and September payrolls is due tonight our time. The minutes from the Fed's last meeting showed several policymakers were against lowering the policy rate. Thomas Barkin saying that their outreach suggests a somewhat weaker labour market than the numbers suggest. The US two-year Treasury yield around 3.56%, the 10-year 4.1%, with markets pricing in a 30% chance the Fed funds rate will be cut by 25 basis points at the December 11 meeting, with a total 3 more cuts in the easing cycle. The US dollar rose, but is weaker against the it is higher against all the majors at the moment. The Aussie dollar at 64.9 US cents and the British pound at 1.3 there. All right, let's get into the charts. Zoran Kresovic from Blueberry Markets joins me. So, Zoran, Nvidia has really allayed those AI bubble fears. Does that mean that we're kind of in for a Santa rally now?
That's a good question, Julia. It certainly has provided us with a bit of upside on the open this morning. It feels like Nvidia was a big elephant in the room, if I can call it that way, or at least that's what it seemed the perception was over the past week or so, because everyone was awaiting for that Q3 results and to see what it would look like actually moving forward. But look, I think looking at the ASX, we've actually seen a bit of a rebound for the first time within 6 or 7 sessions, which I would like to think it's actually positive. We're hitting some critical levels as well. So, I mean, the 8,500 has been providing a bit of support for quite some time now. It's coinciding with that 200-day simple moving average as well. And we are seeing a dead cat bounce in the short interim. But I would love to see what's actually going to happen on the US market tonight. And then hopefully it's a positive session, which will provide a little bit more headwinds for ASX to actually reverse and continue heading higher.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to continue to hopefully think about optimism rather than all this pessimism that has filtered through into the markets, Zoran. Let's have a look as well in what we're seeing with currencies. So what happens here for the yen?
Yeah, good question. So, having a look at the US dollar yen purely on technical aspect, it's probably one of the best chart so far that I've actually found across multiple assets that I've been scanning through over the past few days. US is gaining quite a bit of momentum, and as you mentioned just previously, on the back of that slight dovish stance that there is only 33% chance we will get interest rate cut from Fed in the month of December. Market is actually starting to reprice itself on US dollar being a lot more hawkish than dovish. I think that's actually heavily reflected in the price here, because we can actually see the US dollar is flourishing against Japanese yen. And, there is nothing stopping it from hitting that perhaps major resistance level of 158. Now we can see a sideways range consolidation that was actually happening between the months of July and October. We've broken through quite heavily, and this is probably what's considered a textbook move. Something that we need to consider here, though, with the Japanese yen is that the remarks from Japan's finance minister Katayama came in earlier in the day, signaled the government may be focusing on boosting economic growth through stimulus package. In that case, that scenario will increase their obligations for the administration and likely probably to see dovish stance on Japanese yen moving forward, because right now we're setting only a 15 to 20% chance that we'll get a interest rate cut from Bank of Japan next month. So if that is the case, then US dollar Japanese yen is still considered as a heavy and a pretty safe carry trade, which will likely to probably continue, be appealing for the investors and traders, that's for sure.
All right, and Zoran, finally as well, what we're seeing with oil, because there could be a bit of a litmus test around that $60 level too.
Yeah, so looking at the crude oil, and I know we've spoken for the past few weeks on this one, like it seems that we are actually finding finally a really solid base and solid ground for crude to maybe continue heading a little bit higher. We have seen actually a drop of 2.8% overnight. That was purely on the basis that U.S. like administration was actually placing sanctions on Russian oil producers, Rosneft and Lukoil, which generally produce around 5 million barrels per day of oil. Now, that was actually kind of offset, which is generally considered as a bullish move for crude oil because obviously the less supply in the market, drives a lot more demand, and on the back of that, we would actually like to see crude oil actually continue heading higher. Now, the API data that came out yesterday for the week of ending of November 40th saw an increase of supply of crude oil in the U.S. inventories to around 4.4 million. For the week prior, that the surplus of the expectation was actually to be anywhere around 1.3 million. So we've actually seen a bit of oversupply in the market, and on the back of the crude oil has actually kind of sold off last night. But nevertheless, the downtrend line is still in play. The trend is there to be broken. I feel like we are not far away from that happening. And if it does break through the range, then we could have a very, very impulsive move on crude oil, and we could be heading towards the $65 to $67 resistance level, which I've been saying for a while now. And look, I think as a trader, you have to be patient. You got to manage your risk. You got to have the risk and money management in play. And if you can be concise and you can be quite disciplined about this one, then it could be a really good trade for those that are actually looking for a short-term momentum gain.
All right, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Zoran. That's Zoran Kresovic from Blueberry Markets. That does it for this edition of The Trade. Be sure to join us next time.